Is Bitcoin an environmental disaster? In 1914, to print the money they needed for war, the British, French and German governments all took their countries off the gold standard. What followed was one of the most deadly wars in history. 40 million people lost their lives. Another 20 to 100 million died from the Spanish flu that followed, believed to have originated in the trenches. The environmental damage from the war, the pollution, the waste, the destruction, are verging on unquantifiable. One consequence of the First World War was the Second. That war took 75 million lives, with greater and more wide-reaching environmental destruction. Nothing like the same level of destruction would have been possible with the discipline imposed by gold. Neither France, Britain or Germany had the gold to pay for the war to go on for the extent that it did. The war really would have been over by Christmas because the gold would have run out. Fiat money enabled World War I. From the Napoleonic War, when the UK abandoned gold, to the war in Vietnam, for which the US took itself off the gold standard in 1971 to print the money to pay for it, fiat money is a force for war. No other human activity causes as much environmental destruction as war. Nothing even comes close. As weaponry evolves its capability, so do the environmental consequences. A nuclear bomb causes considerably more damage than a sword. Nothing consumes fossil fuel like war, and the US military's fuel consumption keeps increasing. In World War II, the US Armed Forces used about 1 gallon of fuel per soldier every day. In Desert Storm, fuel usage was about 4 gallons. By 2007, with operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, usage was up to 16 gallons per soldier. Jet fuel is the biggest offender, accounting for 71% of military petroleum consumption. Fighter jets typically get around half a mile per gallon. Tanks are little better. The M1 Abrams, the main battle tank of the US Army, gets about 0.6 miles per gallon. An armoured division can use as much as 600,000 gallons of fuel a day. No surprise to learn, the US Department of Defense is the single largest consumer of fossil fuel in the world. The US Army has not gone green, and neither has China's. All that fuel is burned in war to destroy, not to create. It's called the US Department of Defense. When was the last time the US was invaded? 1815 is the answer. I have focused on its wars. There is also the mammoth environmental damage caused by government waste and the unintended consequences of its misguided spending. The environmental disaster is not Bitcoin, it is big government. When a government has the power to issue money at no cost to itself, its power within a society is disproportionate. Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws, is the famous quote attributed to Mayor Amschel Rothschild. How do we limit what government is capable of? It's all very well saying we have democracy, we have the ballot box. If we don't like what a government is doing, we can vote them out. It doesn't work. The military-industrial complex remains the same, the civil service remains the same, the contractual obligations remain the same. In 2003, 36 million people marched in protest against the war in Iraq before it had even started, in the biggest global peace protest ever seen. Bush and Blair ignored them and went to war anyway, under false pretenses, as it turned out. Protesting doesn't work. Voting changes nothing. There's an old saying amongst Bitcoiners, Bitcoin fixes this. Peter Thiel famously noted in 2008 that politics is not the way to achieve political change. The mode for escape, he said, must involve some sort of new and hitherto untried process that leads us to some undiscovered country. Bitcoin is that escape. In that same year, as governments turned to the digital printing presses to bail out a broken system, Bitcoin was first announced. A decentralized, transparent, open source, apolitical, voluntary, borderless system of money for the borderless medium that is the internet. Governments can't print or debase it. It is your mode of escape from fiat. The more that people use Bitcoin to store their wealth and to trade, the more the government monopoly of money is eroded. The more its power within a society is curtailed, and the more its capacity to cause harm through abuse of fiat is limited. Either Bitcoin will eventually replace fiat, or the competition it provides will enforce greater standards on it, thereby limiting government capacity to cause environmental harm. With tensions rising between the United States and China, and wars by proxy happening across the globe, and modern weaponry technology more destructive than ever, the potential for environmental catastrophe caused by government is greater than at any time ever in history. Let us embrace Bitcoin for the environmental disaster it has the capacity to avert.